Hello, everybody, and welcome to this time on Beyond Room 313 to a Hocus Focus After Hour special with myself and Sarah. Today, we're going to talk about the upcoming, soon-to-be-released Hocus Focus book that we've written, the guidebook to the show, which will be officially launched at the Mysterious Earth Conference in St. Anne's near Blackpool in the north of England, which I will leave a link to pinned in the description and in the comments below. And you want to come along for that, not just for the launch of the book and to get signed copies by me and Sarah, but also Neil is going to release this new film on Lorraine Chateau, and I've seen that already, and it's brilliant. And also there's other great speakers there as well. So Sarah, now that you have boxes of books arriving at your doorstep, and I always remember that first feeling of when the boxes of books, my first book came along. It's terribly exciting. How does it feel now?
Still feels very surreal, like it's not really happening, like it's happening to somebody else. I've had a big box turn up at the door full of books, and they've got your name on and they've got my name on, and I'm flicking through the books just to have a look, and it's like, did I write that? Did I dream that? I'm like, was it somebody else? But yeah, it feels amazing, and for me, I'm very proud, and it's an achievement, and it was a fantastic journey. I enjoyed every second of it, and it's just helped my writing so much, and I've learned so much, not only researching the topics in the book and the things that we talk about, which we'll go into later, but also the process and what exactly goes into writing a book, because it's not just sitting down with the computer and tapping out at the keys. There's the editing and trying not to be too verbose and getting to the point, and not going off on too many tangents, but at the same time putting enough in there to flesh the subject out and keep people interested. So it's a balancing act, and I've really enjoyed it. So thank you for the opportunity, Thomas, and I hope that there'll be a volume 2 and 3 coming along as the years go by as well.
Yeah, I found it, and I'm sure you do. It's a very cathartic moment for a creative person to actually, even if they're an artist and they have a book of their prints or paintings, there's something about seeing that book. It almost justifies your years of interest. Now, we were both interested in Fortean and ontology stuff just as a hobby, but to actually have accumulated all this knowledge and then to actually combine it into a book, there's something, it's almost like a statement of, I didn't just put it up here, it's also out there. So it's like what Joseph Campbell called them, your non-earthly children. I feel like it's a child being born, me personally, every time I do it. So I felt I've done collaborations with you and Neil, and I really, really enjoy doing collaborations now, because it's helped me too, working with other people, allow me to see things from different angles. It's been very refreshing for me as well. So, it's just as enjoyable for me. So thank you for the journey on that one as well. I think we decided today we would talk not just about the book itself, but also, the topics in it. And it's it's quite a full volume. And we got Dr. Neil Rushton, to do the foreword, and he wrote a very beautiful, eloquent foreword to the book itself. And I was like, wow, this is wonderful. And he said that he found the book really enjoyable and fun. And also you could read it end to end and also pick it up as a kind of a dictionary or encyclopedia, to look up things. And I was delighted when I heard that, because I think that's what we aimed for, wasn't it?
Yes, because we were kind of inspired by the old Reader's Digest mystery books and unexplained books, where you could just pick them up and dip into it and dip out of it. But we wanted to go a little bit further and try and tie some of those mysteries and unexplained things into the present day, and how it shapes how we can navigate the times that we're going through now as well.
Exactly. And I think that we did that in a couple of segments, where we took the ontological and Fortean aspects and kind of dovetailed it into a kind of a spiritual survival manual, an emotional survival manual. I think that was something that we both I wasn't really expecting that when we started the book, but as it developed, it was almost, again, cathartic. It was almost like a healing process. When you spoke about the island in the Venice Lagoon, and the behavior of the medical staff, and how that was so similar to, you know, the needlecraft years, and also, you know, the way we associate films and TV shows and books at what we went through. And I think we realized that what we went through during the needlecraft years was greatly aided in our survival and transcendence by this ontological Fortean and sort of like cosmic horror novel, ghost story background. It helped us. And I think it helped a lot of people, like mythology as well. It helped.
I think you've termed the book as the DeLorean for developing the manual, a DeLorean for developing the manual, a more Fortean mindset for living in the modern world, really. And I think the book goes deeper than just being interested in the unexplained and the paranormal, because it also is a guidebook to help you kind of enhance your everyday life with this new sense of curiosity and open-mindedness, and just to kind of develop your own awareness of the subtle energies that are all around us and the synchronicities that are appearing, and to trust your instincts and intuition, and respect and acknowledge that both the unseen, that there are both unseen and seen realms and forces around us, and just because you can't see something doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't exist. And I think the book goes into taking this mindset without worrying, how to deal with worrying what other people think as well, because, you know, going along to get along, as we've already witnessed recently, can be the death of you.
Yes, and even brought the awareness of kind of black magic propaganda into it. And I thought that was something that's always interested me, right back to the Ambit of the Psyche book I wrote, that, you know, if it wasn't for these tools that were handed to us, reading Dennis Wheatley novels and stuff when we were growing up, and watching films like the Satanic Rites of Dracula, these things came to pass in real life during the needlecraft years. And absolutely, I highly value all this stuff in getting through that. Those allegories and metaphors, and, you know, people say, okay, you're just rationalizing what was going on in a kind of context of like paranormal. Yeah, absolutely, 100%. You nailed it. That's exactly what I did. You know why? Because it worked.
Yeah. And I'm like you, I developed my own Fortean mindset at a really early age. And because of that, I didn't really know what a Fortean mindset was as a child, but it was something, and it helped me become the person I am today. And without it, I don't think I'd be sat here talking to you. And I was quite a sensitive child, and I had imaginary friends, and I would see spirit all the time as a child. And thankfully, my parents didn't drum that out of me, and they accepted it as natural, and they encouraged me to talk about it, and then they comfort me and tell me not to be afraid. And because of that, I developed a love of the paranormal and reading about the unexplained. There was a book we had at school, the Reader's Digest Book of Mysteries, I think it was called. And I remember every break time, me and a group of others would be just crowded around this book, looking at pictures of the Bigfoot, of photographs of people's auras and so-called ghosts, and photographs, all kinds of things. I mean, things that are still unexplained today, things that have been solved, and things that have been confirmed as supernatural. And also, like yourself, watching the Hammer House of Horror double bill on the BBC when we was a kid, that had a big influence on me. We lived in a haunted house, so that helped me understand and accept from a young age that there's more to life than what we can physically see. And I really believe that upbringing and those experiences have helped me through the last 4 years and helped me keep my blood clean and intact. And I always knew there was something wrong. And when I was younger, 20s, 30s, I even dipped my toe in the New Age sphere. And I think that that's a natural progression, that you fall into those things to get to, well, for me, personally speaking, to get where I am now on my pagan path, I had to experience the New Age to understand that it's not the answer. and the truther sphere to a certain extent, to gain the clarity. It's not the answer, and to get the clarity that's come into my head through seeing through all that. And it's helped me become the person and the pagan that I am today. So I think we go through these fads and phases and learn how to question things that don't feel right, and we develop the courage to speak up about them. So for me, yeah, the 40 mindset's helped me in ways that I could never have imagined. And I'll even go so far as to say that it's kept me alive, because it stopped me falling down many rabbit holes and getting lost. It stopped me going along with the masses. I don't go along to get along, and it helps to build up your psychic resilience. Because when your mind's open to all different possibilities and you're not kind of fixated on one official version of reality, I think you become stronger and you become more adaptable. So you're less shaken up when these unexpected things and agendas come along. And it doesn't mean you're desensitized to it, but it means that you don't instantly react and follow the masses, and you start to think things over and you look at things before making a decision. And that's what our book encourages you to do. And I think that these days it's really, really important and a very effective antidote to, like what you said about the black magic spells of the mainstream and the TV. So critical thinking and discernment and questioning everything is really important, because now, or maybe always, but certainly now, we're faced with so much conflicting information that's designed to confuse you on purpose. So you need to keep your wits about you and your head about you. So this book's a guidebook for those who are curious about what you can see and about reality beyond the surface, and also for those that want to see beyond the mainstream.
When you're building your own model of the universe, it's very important, like you said, you did the truther thing. I did that a bit, and New Age thing. I didn't do that, but I had a go at Satanism for a while, which I found very interesting and everything. And it was, part of the process. The model is an ongoing model. It's never completed. It's constantly in development. There is no, and I think that's a huge part of like paganism as well, is that there is no moment of salvation. And I think that's why pagan-minded people or polytheistic people have a very healthier approach to the study of the Fortean and the paranormal, even if they don't know what they are as kids. There's one part in the book that's absolutely one of my favorite parts, both to write and read and think about, is how you and I were both profoundly changed by blackouts we experienced, electricity blackouts we went through as children. Me in Ireland with the Arab oil embargo in the 1970s, when the place I grew up in was all high-rise buildings, just went into blackness and the stars appeared. And you in England with the miners' strike in the 80s and the blackouts then, and how we were thrown into this mystical world. Other people experience this when they go camping in the countryside from the city, and they might see the stars for the first time and the moon over the sea or something. And I love that part of the book. I love what you wrote about how people used candles and played games and told stories and read books of ghost stories and stuff like that. And oh gosh, I can remember that. I can remember that almost in a psychedelic way, how powerful that was.
Yes. And also the night sky as well. I remember as a result of that, I did a topic. I remember at school, just before the summer holidays in primary school, it was, I forget which year, but just before the summer holidays, when we'd finished our work, we were allowed to pick a topic to write about, and you could kind of like a scrapbook, and you could stick pictures in and write and draw about whatever you was interested in. And I remember a lot of the kids in the class were doing topics like flags of the world, birds, the favorite TV program, that kind of thing. And I picked astronomy. And the teacher, the teacher thought I was a bit weird. And I think I remember him wanting to speak to my parents about it because he couldn't understand why I would pick a subject like that. And as a result of that subject, I learned all about the constellations, and I still have a a big interest in astronomy and the stars now, looking at the constellations in the sky and just looking out there. And that was a result of growing up through the blackouts.
Yeah. I posted a photo illustration the other day of the Ladybird Book of the Night Sky, which was absolutely one of the most pivotal books for me as a child. Those beautiful illustrations that almost like some of them were almost gothic of the English towns, and there's one beautiful one of St. Michael's Mount from Marazion, which Jason Heppenstall took a photograph of and said that's where he did the egg ritual during lockdown, which is everything comes full circle. It's remarkable. It's just remarkable. But I can remember I took a huge interest in astrology, and a friend of mine, Tommy Farrell, there was a thing on Ulster Television to win a competition for schools' projects on astronomy. And we did one on, I can't remember what it was. I think it might have been on the moon. We were one of the winners, but we couldn't go up to the Armagh Planetarium in Northern Ireland at the time because there was a war going on. So we both won a Polaroid camera each, but we couldn't collect them. It was amazing that we actually won that on the TV, the young people's astronomy show, But I always, to this day, I can remember the chills I used to get switching on the BBC and hearing the opening music to Patrick Moore of The Sky at Night. Now, that is hauntological. That is seriously powerful.
Yes, you've just actually brought back a memory there, talking about winning a prize for the astronomy. We had it was a competition at the school with the topics that they'd given us, and I remember now, it's come back to me, the teacher didn't think I'd come up with that topic on my own. He thought I was getting help from home, so that's why he wanted to speak to my parents about it, and because of that I didn't win the competition. I got a runner-up prize, and it was because, oh, you didn't come up with that on your own, and who's helped you with that? And it wasn't a case of that. It was a genuine interest. And obviously, yes, your parents help you, because it's a big subject, and they encouraged me with it. But yeah, I remember the teacher said, no, there's no possible way that you could have found an interest in. Why would you be interested in that?
Well, that just brings home the point I've been making for years, but the kind of people are going to teaching. It's what they say. People who can, and people who can't teach. That's a classic example of it. Yeah,
and
but
his name is Mr. Ashton.
Yeah,
If he's watching, I'll name and shame you, Mr. Ashton. Probably dead now.
Yeah, I'm sure he got his teaching pension and just like dissipated away somewhere, writing letters to the complaint to the local newspapers. But yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of the book, and because it was almost psychedelic reading it, because all these memories came flooding back and it also drives home the power of the modern world has in creating an oppressive state towards our spiritual and cultural and folkloric development. What the television did, even back then, the power of the television. And then you also wrote a really good piece on the TV movie Threads, which I've still not seen. I haven't got around to it, but I've also seen an interview or a YouTube video recently where some American guy said he saw it and he said it's absolutely horrific. Don't watch it. It will really haunt you. Now that went down primetime TV when you were growing up, and it's black magic, isn't it? When you think about it, look back at it now, it's black magic.
That film, terrible the way it was built up to the impact that came. Just Saturday morning shoppers in Sheffield going about the daily business with the troubles going on behind as a kind of sub story, and just the images of when the bomb went off and what happened, and people melting, and it was just horrible. Yeah, and they used to show that in schools as well.
But there's something else there. It showed you at a young age that rather than us being into the 40 and all this stuff, that we're in the illusionary world, the real illusionary world is the everyday make-believe of society. And when that falls apart, boy, does it fall apart. It really goes to pieces. And it's because of films like Threads and other things that we've watched ourselves over the years and read, that again, when the needlecraft years took in, came in, while the rest of society was walking around bewildered, uh, because basically the switch had been switched off. We had already had the toolkits within us to know that this is how the normies would behave, and to stay well away from them. I always remember, it's not one of my formative year ones, but it's quite recently. It was the Tom Cruise remake of War of the Worlds, and how when society in New Jersey started falling apart, rather than running across country, all the normies, and they started moving along the highways, making it easier for the Martians to get them, or we're going to the ferry across the Hudson, where, the much safer way to do it would be to move across country. And I always remember, if I had seen that when I was a young kid, I'd remember that for the rest of my life. If there's ever a social breakdown and you got to run, move across country at night. Don't go on the daytime with everyone else. And that I always remembered seeing the lines of the needlecrafted waiting for their transubstantiation. That reminded me of the highway scene in that movie.
One thing I've learned from watching Threads, despite the fact that it's psychologically terrorizing, but one thing I'm grateful to that movie for is during the 80s, the propaganda for nuclear war during the Cold War was in your face all the time, and they presented it as though President Reagan was going to fall asleep accidentally and hit the red button by mistake, and that's how in your face it was. And we're still here, and we're still vertical, and nothing happened, despite that film, and despite all the terrible propaganda and the pop music like Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Frankie Says, War,
the Two Tribes song, you couldn't get away from it. Fantastic song, absolutely amazing song with the Trevor Horn production. One of my favorite records from pop records from the 80s, but you weren't allowed to not forget it. It was always there. It was always there in the background. I was living during those years. I was a young lad just gone to America, and I was living. So it didn't have the same darkness that it had. I think you guys had it much darker. There was more of Americans had a delusion that if a war started, they win it no problem, But it was like but I can imagine how in British culture it was so saturated that the bomb was going to drop on any minute, and that's it, And it'd been going on for years, like the Wall by Pink Floyd, Mama Will They Drop the Bomb, it was just nonstop. This the whole concept that it was going to happen. And it's amazing that, and at the same time, at all this nihilism, the 80s was a glorious period, perhaps the last most fantastic decade, probably the most fantastic decade ever of culture and creative people.
Yes, that's because a lot of people, especially younger people, and people who know themselves very well inside, use that as use creativity as an escape, because you can either sit there in doom and gloom and get depressed about it and follow the mainstream TV, or you can go into your own head and your imagination, and you can think, well, I'm going to create something. I need an escape from this, and you start creating some of the most amazing things, the most amazing music, and any books, writing, anything really, because it's a form of escapism.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I they laugh at them now, but I consider bands like Wham to have almost provided a kind of social therapy. Their songs actually cheered people up during this period, and I can remember during the miners' strike in England, again, I wasn't living on this side of the world, but I was following it and very interested in it because I got family and everything in the north of England. And I can remember, like, I didn't want to hear Billy Bragg or even Paul Weller and the Style Council, which were a really good band, singing about the miners and stuff, a stone's throw away. To me, that would just make things worse, the kind of boys from the black stuff kind of approach to it. I was much more like, I would say the antidote is just basically, the likes of Wham and all those kind of other bands that cheered people up. And it showed something, people, well, how could you ignore such a dark thing? Very easily, because I'm not going to submit to your black magic.
Yes. And talking about black magic, going back to threads and the threat of nuclear war during the Cold War in the 80s, seeping into popular music as well, which was an escape for many people, but you couldn't get away from it. And wearing T-shirts with the slogan "Frankie says war," it was everywhere you looked. But looking back on that now and coming to where we are now has taught me that it's nothing new. This propaganda is nothing new. No matter what they tell you, you're going to get through it. Just like Thomas says, just wait. It's only temporary. And if we can survive the propaganda that came in the 80s with respect to nuclear war and nothing happened, then what they're throwing at us now, really, in comparison, we can get through that as well. You just got to learn to switch off from it and ignore it, because it's, if you turn the television off, it doesn't exist. That's what I learned.
Yeah, exactly. Or don't talk to these people who are just misery guts. Don't talk to them. So, and central to all this is this notion that we grew up in a ontological, paranormal Fortean framework, that this was not just escapism. It was to an extent, but later on in life, these things manifested. Why it's why I call, and Mother Hydra's babies in the needlecraft what they are, because that's, then that becomes real, it becomes resolved in recent news that has come out from Japan regarding these things. It's the same with the Dennis Wheatley, the transhumanism thing. I was reading Dennis Wheatley novels when I was a young person, and they were talking about all the things we're dealing with now with genetic changes of people and all that other stuff. Well, then it was in the sense of homiculum and all this stuff, and it was all the same aristocrats in their stately homes wanting to live forever or alter the population in some kind of chemical or magical way, and that's still going on. And again, you're given a grounding by this stuff. This stuff was not a waste of time. It was not. It was like not. It was, I was watching, like, even things like recently watching Quatermass 4 and the Planet People. That's just stop oil. That's a cult traveling the land, waiting to be harvested by this death force from above, and that's all starting to come out now in other forms of literature as well. Give it enough time. They always say, give it enough time, and the conspiracy theories will come true. Well, give it enough time, and the paranormal will come true too.
So, yeah, going back to what you were saying there about Quatermass and the pit and it portraying just stop oil, but it was way back then. I think that some of the truthers think that all this stuff is new and that they've discovered something profound that nobody else knows about. But all the black magic spells and the propaganda and the fear, the plagues, just stop oil, transhumanism and all that, they've been being thrown at us for decades through the TV and the media, just under different guises and different buzzwords and slogans. But I think this time the difference is that the force behind it is much more visible to those of us that have got the eyes to see it. But it's been there all along, just using different people in power over the decades. And I posted a video on Facebook the other day, and it was showing an Australian TV show which would turn up every Saturday in a supermarket car park with a Wheel of Fortune, big cardboard thing that people could spin to win money after they'd attended the needlecraft classes. And it was creepy, but not only because people were stupid enough to do it, but because, and I don't know about you, but you could really see and feel what was behind the facade and this spiritual force behind it. It wasn't human, and it was like something out of an episode of Black Mirror. So, like you said, the conspiracy theories become real, and the paranormal also becomes real if you've got the eyes and the training, the life experience and training to see.
Do you remember, back to the nuclear thing again, Greenham Common, the women's protest? There were all the women who took their kids to the Greenham Common military base in England to protest the arrival of Trident missiles when they were being delivered from the US into the bunkers there to be part of the Cold War thing. And at the time, you were like, oh, well, all these women were all just trying to protect their children, and they were protesting against the actual nuclear proliferation. And that was probably true for many of them. But the whole purpose really was to enforce upon you that you're in the middle of this situation. and to make you worry about it, make you think about it. And an interesting thing that happened at Greenham Common is a lot of women experience paranormal events. There was lots of UFO sightings above the people that they saw them. So this was like, you know, the truther element would say, oh, they were all like psyops that were put out there. But I also think they were self-generated. Like we cover Marian apparitions and hysteria also in the book. And so again, once again, the conspiracy becomes true after time, and so does the paranormal become true after time. I put that video that Sarah is talking about, if you're not on Facebook, on my Substack page. It's the latest article in there, and you can see this bizarre demonic episode on New Zealand TV that's just like, it leaves you feeling it just, you know, disturbed and rattled. It's so creepy.
That's the word. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Demonic. That nails it. Yes, it's
Even the way they spin the wheel, it seemed almost like a magic implement or something.
And that one of the presenters, the one spinning the wheel, she was actually pregnant, I noticed.
I know, yeah. Imagine bringing a child into that world with that energy around it, but she's probably as bad as the rest of them. And the way she said 1,000 books, it was almost delivered as a kind of a messianic religious way, like Jesus loves you, you know. It was so creepy.
I think I'd rather starve than get involved in that.
Yeah, and I did feel sorry for the some of the contestants. You know, they seemed like nice enough people. There was one man in a suit, and he seemed genuinely happy to win the money. But I was thinking, is that poor man still alive now? You know?
Yeah, well, it might pay for his cardiologist appointment, maybe.
Mm.
Don't know. So I want to, we also in the book, as well as the 14 aspect, we bring the hauntology aspects of things from the past and their influence on things now and in the future. And I often get asked what hauntology means. So here's my perspective on what it is, and then I want to compare it to what Thomas thinks about it. Now, for me, my understanding of it and how I write about it is it's about how the past haunts our present and shapes the future. So a really simple way to explain it for someone who's never come across it before would be to imagine that you're listening to an old song that reminds you of a time when you had big dreams or big hopes that never quite came true. And it's that feeling of nostalgia that's mixed up with a sense of loss, or it could even be for something that you can't put your finger on, that you feel sad for. And it's because of something that could have happened, but didn't happen. And I think that's a bit like what hauntology describes. It's like the idea that our current culture or ideas are influenced by these ghosts of the past and things like old music styles or political ideals and social movements that never really fully disappeared. But instead, they're kind of in the background, they're still there, affecting how we look at the world today. So hauntology is kind of saying that in a way, the past isn't really gone, it's still with us, and it still shapes our thoughts and culture and even our idea of what the future could turn out to be.
Yes, I would agree with that. I wouldn't use sadness more. I'd use melancholia. Melancholy. Yeah, like a pensive melancholy. It's often triggered by locations and visiting things. I'll give you, and not just only hearing music, but that kind of thing. I'll give one. I'm addicted to old English churchyards. The classic, you know, English churchyard with the Norman type church with the square tower, steeple, and a few graves in the back, and the pitch roof and made of stone, usually with, you know, yew trees growing in them. I'm addicted to them. I cannot walk past one when I'm in England and not go into them. And I know a lot of it has to do with that. Many of them are built on ancient pagan temple sites, and that's, you know, it's confirmed by St. Augustine. But they do something else, and I recently realized what it was when I posted that picture of the stars in the Ladybird Book of the Night Sky. It shows a classic English churchyard, and I think that is the hauntological, should we say, trigger in that case. It's really about a feeling being triggered, I think.
Yeah, that's a perfect description, because even if you look at the night sky now, and you see a certain constellation, Orion, for example, that brings back so many memories for me of childhood
Yeah.
because of the topics that I had to do at school that I told you about, and just takes me back to a place when I had lots of dreams and aspirations that didn't all necessarily come to fruition, but it makes me nostalgic and sometimes, yeah, a little bit melancholy about what could have been, but wasn't.
The longing for a past that maybe it took place in another reality, longing for a world that never was. But it definitely is tied into the paranormal and the Fortean as well, in that it can often be triggered by these things and these cultural aspects of these things. Like I just said, I remember the first time I was talking today I ever saw Stonehenge was when you could go up by the old side road. It was a farmer's track. It's now closed. And it was a way of getting to see it without actually going into the stupid visitor center. And it was the sun was going down over Salisbury Plain and it was there in the mist. And it was just like, all the TV shows and films I'd watched from Night of the Demon to Quatermass 4 that featured it, and it just was Children of the Stones, and all this stuff came in a kind of a hauntological epiphany, is the way I'd put it. I'd use the expression epiphany, in that it makes you realize what the purpose of your life also is as well, because it brings a meaning to your life and your interests that have almost like a pseudological spiritual element of the experience as well.
I would say that the events on 9/11 are also very hauntological as well.
Go on,
Because,
tell us more. I want to hear about that.
well, that takes us back to another world. It's a time that we can never get back to. That whether it's a different timeline or a different reality, whatever happened as a result of that, but we can never get back there. We can only make the best of where we are now. So that seeing the Twin Towers still standing kind of brings on the melancholy and the nostalgia for something, but I don't know what that nostalgia is. I just know that it's not here now. Whatever it is you're longing for, it isn't here now.
Well, I know you and I both agree on this concept that we're trapped between two overlapping realities. And I think we could get back to that. I think, there is a way back there. And I think the hauntological thing is almost like a magical ritual to get you back there. There's a famous broadcast from Channel 11 in New York on the night before 9/11. It was, it was September 10th, 2001. And my God, you might have been watching the 1960s or 80s. It's so different that the universe and our experience of this reality changed the following day. And I am a firm believer in the whole overlapping reality thing. I know it's real. I experience it every day of my life in some way or another. Just the strangeness of the world today. And again, I was on the Luke Collins show this morning talking about that. And if we didn't have the eyes to understand these things, we were still normal. I was never a normie. I know you weren't either. But if you were a normie, you would go insane trying to rationalize the world right now, or just be like someone who's a prisoner of war and accept it.
Yes. Yeah. Another example of that. Now, this might sound a bit out there and crazy to you, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I love the TV show Life on Mars. Love it. From a superficial level, great characters, fantastic storyline, 1970s TV cop show with some science fiction without giving the plot away, and some time what you think is time travel, but actually isn't time travel. But I loved it so much. I must have watched this program 10 times over and over and over, and I get quite emotional watching it, and I get really drawn into the fact that these people are in a reality that's different to where they think they are. So, and two of the characters from Life on Mars and from the follow-on series, Ashes to Ashes, they realize that they're where they shouldn't be and they're trying to get back to their own reality. And it just felt, watching it, even before I got this idea that we might be stuck between two realities, it felt very familiar. there was something about it that touched me on a deeper level than just it being an enjoyable TV show. And I don't normally get pulled into TV shows where they make me emotional, and I think about them all the time and get obsessed with them. I enjoy them, drama shows and things, but I don't become obsessed. But I couldn't get this out of my head. And over the last 24 months, maybe, that show now has started to make sense to me, and maybe why I was so drawn to it and why I put myself right in that world, because I think that we might be in a similar situation. And as it turned out, in life on Mars, they were actually in purgatory, and they didn't realize they'd been there. So they died. They'd been dead so long they'd forgotten they were dead, and they were stuck between the living and the dead, the life between lives.
A show that does that for me, and I didn't even grow up with it, is the American 1960s soap opera Dark Shadows. I was a baby when that was first released, so that's how long ago it was. And I didn't see it until many years later when reruns were put on American television when I was living there. And now you can watch most of them online, or all out there some way. And that's set in a fictional town called Collinsport in Maine, which is actually based on Booksport, which is a real place I did a film on this channel about, on the hauntology there. But it's set in like this alternative universe, really, that's in Maine, but it's somewhere else among this Collins family involving vampires and everything else. And there's just something, there's a slight sadness to every episode. I can't explain it, but there's that hauntological thing. And I know Maine quite well, and I know the state very well. And the state is kind of like the nearest thing you'd have in America to like Britain or Ireland in terms of folklore. That's why it's produced so much like stuff like for Stephen King and so many of the stories like that, Lovecraft and so on. The show does that to me, and I have no connection to it. I didn't see it as a child. I saw it as an adult, but for some reason, the alternative realities described in this 1960s soap opera, it puts me in that same feeling. I think purgatory it's almost like a psychic purgatory is a very good way to put it. Within the Kabbalah and within Hebrew is mysticism, there's a concept of a place called Sheol. It's their version of hell in the afterlife. And it's not like the Christian version of hell. It's a place of longing and introspection. And it almost reminds me of the way it's described as a hauntological type state. Melancholy, introspective life review. And to me, that would almost feel like a purgatory of it. Like, I think purgatory is a very good way to metaphoricize this experience of hauntology in many ways. We're living in a kind of a cultural purgatory when these things are triggered.
That's interesting. It's something to think about, actually, because a lot of spiritual people believe that when you die, you have a life review, and a lot of these new age books say that you die and you go off somewhere, your consciousness, and you're shown a recording of your life, and you look at everything. But maybe it doesn't have to be like that. Perhaps you are put somewhere like now, and you're stuck here with this melancholy, and you're thinking about things, and you're being in introspective.
Yeah,
looking back at things.
That does happen, because a man I worked with when I was a kid fell off a boat and into the river, and he said he was drowning, and he said he saw that movie of the life review. So that seems to be true as well.
Yeah, like they say your life flashes before you, doesn't it, in an instant. But I would say that if you're close to death or having a near-death experience, what might be an instant in this world, it could have been 3 hours where he was, or there is no time. So there is no time. You're outside the constrictions of time, aren't you? So,
yeah, get the clock speed of the human brain gives us a very false. It's only just a way of measuring, quantifying the quantum fluctuation. That's all it is. So another thing about the book is that we wanted to have plenty of illustrations in it, not just because I like books like this with illustrations in them, but I love captions, and some of the captions are mini essays inside of themselves, and that's another aspect. So literally the photographs themselves are another topic, just in terms of the captions with them. And we were lucky to draw on a lot of illustrations, because I have a large photographic collection, and Sarah took some as well for certain stories on the Moors and Ian Brady and Marta Hindley, and the ontological effect of that and the sociological effect of that. And we also were able to find lots of images that were in the public domain or had recently come into the public domain. So it's a really well illustrated book too, not just for the interesting imagery that adds to the story, but also we've worked a lot on making the captions mini essays in of themselves. Yeah, sure. We kind of made memes of them. I was just thinking of that the other day, looking at the copy of the book. We've actually taken the meme from the internet and put it into a book.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. This, I don't want the book to disappear with the background. Can you see that?
The BBC test card.
Yeah. I'll just read you the caption on this one. I don't want to read too much of the book, but I'll. The strangely disturbing test card F, which ruled the BBC's transmission downtime for almost 40 years and embedded itself into the minds of millions of British children. The test card F clown has been theorised as the inspiration for the Sandown clown. In that, the children may have generated a kind of tulpa thought form designed to appear familiar to their cognitive awareness.
And that caption sums up the book very well. We have conspiracy, which we're both interested in, mind control, propaganda, ontology, and paranormal, as well as nostalgia and cultural and sociological aspects. I think that caption you read sums up the book, the ethos of the book, very well.
Yes. Another one there from the movie Night of the Demon.
Yep. Stonehenge.
Yes, I'll give you the caption for this one. Based upon a 1911 short story with more ghost stories of an antiquarian, the 1957 movie Night of the Demon is part of a genre of fictional stories surrounding the possibility of stone circles and other ancient sites being somehow infused with arcane occult forces and secrets. Halloween 3, anyone?
Yep. And
much of this is rooted in past puritanical Christian fears, as well as historical and cultural ignorance of such places. However, it may well also be true.
Yep. Children of the Stones, Master 4, Night of the Demon, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the magic of the ancient shamans or whatever they were at Stonehenge, back when the monument was a temple, continues to live within the cultural framework of the occult literature and filmmaking of the present. So it's then seen as a continuous ritual from the past into the present. This is what you tell this is what you need to know when you go to these places. This is why Lovecraft spoke about the stone circle on the top of Sentinel Hill in the Dunwich Horror, that when Nigel Neal wrote Quatermass 4, he was making a homage. He was almost like the high priest continuing that. Greg Moffat has done some great work on this, and he'll also be at the Mysterious Earth conference talking about this very subject.
When you enter a stone circle, you are entering somebody's domain, but
Yes,
it's just not somebody of this realm, but you are entering somebody's domain. You need to be respectful.
And also, not all stone circles, a lot of the new agey people and the hippie people kind of think, oh, they're all wonderful and nice. There's some really dark ones, like the Rollright stones, which recover a notorious occult murder which took place in the actual stones, occult happenings and murders which took place there during World War II. Again, solidifying the Dennis Wheatley kind of notions with that of actual real life events. Give it enough time, the conspiracies and the Fortean and the mystical true, yeah.
I pick another one. I can't find the right stones in it. There's that much in it, it's difficult. And here we start talking about deep towns. Now, Bury, England in 1980, and those who have grown up in the rundown streets of Industrial Revolution era slums are far more likely to believe in the paranormal, not because they are uneducated, rather it is because they often experience it firsthand in a way people in comfortable suburbs do not. Urban slums are massive psychic repositories of decades and even centuries of human experiences taken to the extreme. Folks who lived within such locations have a psychic street smarts brought about by their own personal experiences. And we got a whole chapter on
Oh, big time. Yeah, because
on
you
the
have to
deep
understand
town.
that people living in these deep towns are the same as people who lived in rural agrarian societies in the past. Their folklore and their folk beliefs continue on in red brick buildings, in urban, streetscapes. And we talk a lot about psychometry type ideas in the book as well, and stone taping. And Birkenhead, just across the river from Liverpool, is a classic example of what you just said. It had never been developed really since, the olden days. It's still got a lot of old red brick buildings, and it is loaded with that energy.
I'm just going to take you back to the hauntology aspect. And this was one that you wrote about, which was a favourite of mine, which was the TV detector vans.
Oh, yeah.
TV detector vans. And the caption for this is the psychologically powerful loudspeaker car representing the tyranny of occupation was a central theme in The Silent Village. This was a 1943 British propaganda short film in the form of a drama documentary directed by Humphrey Jennings. The haunting and sinister image of the Third Reich loudspeaker car making its way through a conquered community was eventually to make its way into real life with the BBC TV detector vans, and we blow the lid right off that van.
Oh, yeah.
In the book.
Absolutely. That's state-sponsored black magic, terrorizing grannies that they'll go to prison because a van outside that has nothing in it, just a rotating, even that on the roof, a TV aerial can tell that she hasn't paid her license. It's shocking stuff when you think what what people have had to put up with these clowns. But they're not clowns; they're dark magicians in their own way.
What we mentioned earlier, Frankie Says War.
Yep. The ad for the shirt. Yep.
Yes. The popular culture oddness of the mid-1980s with its dance as they drop the bomb nature was summed up by the popular T-shirt range produced by the Liverpool band Frankie Goes to Hollywood. These T-shirts were essentially government warnings and other slogans designed to make the person wearing them become something of a walking public service announcement, mainly with the message that death by atomic horror is just around the corner and do not ever forget this. While obviously the band themselves played no part in how this cultural phenomenon played into the doomed zeitgeist of the era, it demonstrates the power of mass media trends and how they are subconsciously reframed.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this book. I'm going to have to read it again.
I think we've given people a good flavor of what the book is like. Yeah. And on top of all this stuff, there's loads of paranormal and Fortean stories with our versions and take of them.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's like it's a lot like if you got all my work, all Sarah's work, Hocus Focus, Beyond Room 313, and everything on all that stuff, put it onto a book. That's it. This is the book. And hopefully it's the first of several.
Yeah. It's packed full of stuff. Yeah. It's worth every penny.
It is. It is. It's definitely the kind of book I'd want anyway on my collection, no matter where it came from. And it's useful as well because when I spoke to you at first, I also want to make a guidebook like my book, The Druid Code. Not only you're reading this stuff, but it makes you want to go to these places as well and see them and watch these films and do these things. It's almost like an exercise book as much as it's an information book. Okay, Sarah, thanks for that. As we said, the book will be officially launched on the weekend of the 7th of September. Sarah and I will be live to sign copies and at the Mysterious Air Conference, and the book around the same weekend will be then available for purchase. The direct from Lulu, but it'll be on Amazon and World of Books and everywhere else as well. So thanks for that, Sarah. Thanks for doing that. It's nice. You've jogged my memory about writing the book, and I'm definitely I think people will enjoy it. I hope they do, and it's one more thing in the arsenal of people to stay sane in a world that's increasingly crazy.
Yeah, it's a necessary book to do that. Yes. I'm very proud of it, Thomas. And
so you should be. And thank you to Dr. Neil Rushton for doing the introduction. It's fabulous. Okay, and I will see you in St. Anne's in September,
yes.
and then we're back with Hocus Focus and Hocus Focus After Hours on a very regular basis, starting at the end of October.
Yes, so please bear with us and we will be back bigger and better.
Yep, and Sarah will have a proper studio this time.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, Sarah. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.